Hi, my name is Joseph Hammond. I'm a freelance illustrator, and in this video I'm going to be discussing how I make the decision on what colors I use for the skin tone. I'm going to go through step by step. I'm going to explain what I'm thinking and how to apply the colors within the skin tone here, and how to create an illusion of realistic skin. Okay, having said that, let's get right down to the video. So this is the reference material that I picked. And the reason why I picked it was because I could see the temperature changes really well. I could see the value changes and the temperature. Okay, make sure you can see those before you start on your painting. Okay, now I started here rather than with the drawing, because this video is going to be about skin tones. Now, if you want to see the whole drawing, I have a video out about 3 videos ago that is about form, okay? And that shows you the drawing from the very beginning to the end. Okay, so how did I decide on which pencils to pick? Okay, the pencils that I used were Carbo Othello pastel pencils, and the other one was Conte a Paris pastel pencils. The paper I used is a paper called, now I'll pronounce this as best I can, Sinalea, and it's a pastel card. Okay, it's a sanded paper, and now, how did I pick the pencils? I went for, okay, first thing I need is my darkest dark, which was a black. And I needed my lightest light, which is a white. Okay, and then I needed to look at my cool colors. My coolest dark would be like a gray blue. And I picked that for my coolest dark. And my warmest dark was going to be this warm brown color. Now, I can't tell you the colors of the pencils itself because none of them are marked, okay? They're all numbered, and you have to kind of match the number. And it makes it difficult. So look for probably like that one pencil I just have right there. That was my warmest dark, okay? And then I go for the most intense warm, which would be more like a cadmium red. And then I went for my most cool, there you go. Dark was, intense cool was like an ultramarine blue. Okay. Now, then I decided I needed to get, since I have a dark gray, I needed a cool light. Okay, so I went for a cool light gray. See, the grays come in different degrees, okay, of value. The value is your lights and your darks. You have black and white and all the grays in between. That's your values. Okay, so they come in different degrees of values, okay? And you can buy these individually. If you're new at this and you wanted to buy a set, I would not buy a set unless it's a very small set. Number one, you might not like it, and you don't want to end up with 100 pastel pencils and never use it again. You can go individually, and you can buy a light, like a light pink, or a light gray, a dark gray, like I'm just telling you just now. Okay, and you can buy those individually. That way, you can do a drawing, or like one of the videos I did, I had a set. I think it is called Conte a Paris sketch set, and with those colors alone, I think there's 6 colors there. I was able to perform a whole painting with it, and it came out pretty good. So you might want to try something like that first before you invest a lot of money into a bigger set. So anyhow, now, how do I decide where to put these colors? Okay, so the first thing I do is I decide, okay, where is my coolest cool going to be on this piece? And I made the decision that the coolest cool, I make this decision by looking at the reference material. My coolest cool is going to be on the left-hand side of the right eye. Okay, you see that cool area, sort of a bluish color? That was the dark bluish gray that I have. Okay, I lay that down lightly. Okay, I'm not trying to fill up all the, sanded grit in one layer. You're going to be putting down like 7 layers. So you're going to be putting it down lightly, and remember all your temperature, which is, you know, your lights and your darks are going to be flexed. In other words, it's not going to be all cool gray. It's going to go from cool gray to more of a lavender shade and more into pink, and it gradates. Okay, just like everything else that I do, they gradate. Okay, your values, which is your lights and your darks, gradate from dark to light. Okay, your temperatures gradate from cool to warm. Your edges gradate from hard to soft. Okay, and there's all degrees in between all of these. Okay, so never think of it as hard, soft, cool, warm, dark, light. Okay, remember all the in-betweens. Okay, so now once I've established that cool area there, I can look at anything else on this painting and say, is it going to be that cool? Okay, no, it's not going to be that cool because that's my coolest spot. So I know that I can start adding a warmer color. Is it going to be the same value? If it is, I add in more of a terracotta type, color to it, and it'll make it into more of a purplish color. Okay, and then I'll get lighter and lighter. I start to add a lighter pink, and then I go over the whole thing with white, like I'm showing you right now. See the terracotta along the cheekbone there, the cheekbone and the jaw. Okay, that's my terracotta pink, red. And then around the eye there, where the eye socket is, I've added more of a bluish color to that, like my middle gray, I think it was. And I make a decision on, is that going to be a little bit warmer, so I may add a little bit more red there or a little bit more pink, depending on. And once I've decided that that's the correct areas of warmth and cool, I go in the whole thing with my white pencil. Okay, now the thinking of that is, I used to paint in oil paints, okay, and you mix your colors on your palette. Okay, here I'm going to be mixing my colors on the surface of the paper, okay, because obviously you don't have a palette. So everything I mix, like I put down that terracotta color and maybe a little bit of a blue to start blending it in. I mix that in at the first level, and then I'm mixing in my whites, because in oil paints everything is pretty much mixed with white. Okay, that's how you mix your colors. White is your most important color. Okay, and in pastels here, you'll find that that is the color that you use the most also. Now, the way I lay down the strokes, I think you could just see that just now, was think of it as a clock, okay? 6 and 12 is my strokes. I'm doing about maybe, 10 strokes that way. And then I go to 1 and 7, and put in 10 strokes that way. It doesn't have to be 10 strokes, but, that's just an example. And then, so forth and so forth and so forth. Go around that clock that way. And then I'll start to get like a weave, okay? A weave of the color. And then I can go over it with my brush like I'm doing right now. That is a watercolor brush. It has a soft hair to it, okay? And it's good for blending here. Now, when you do it, you think of it as more like painting with that brush rather than just smudging it around. Okay, now I'm putting in my light again because I want this to be lighter than my forehead, but not as light as the tip of her nose. Okay, why do I make that decision? The tip of her nose, when it's light like that, it's going to come forward. Okay, when things are more neutral in value, they recede back in space. Okay, now I've decided that, okay, my forehead is too light. Okay, the way I'm going to bring down the value is I'm going to go over it with my brush here. Okay, see how I'm actually like cross hatching, okay, with my brush. It's just like I'm painting with my brush, okay? I'm not just smudging this color around. So I'm cross hatching with my brush, and I'm bringing down that value. I'm making it so it's not quite so intense, and it's gonna compete with my cheek, and because your forehead slightly slants back, okay, and your cheek slants forward, right? That's what you have to be thinking at the same time as you're doing this, and it makes it difficult, okay? Like I said, if you're beginning, and just as this is a beginning drawing, or you're just beginning with pastels, it would be much easier for you to do a monochromatic drawing first. Okay, do it in maybe, I don't know, sepia and white. Do the exact same thing as I'm telling you here, but with sepia and white, and then go in and add the color on top of that. Okay, it would make it half as hard. Okay, it's still not going to be easy, but it's going to be half as hard. Okay, because right now you're, like I give the example that you're juggling with 4 balls here. You're doing color, values, line, drawing. Everything is all coming together at one time. And once you get, to be doing this enough times, you can juggle 4 balls. Like you can see a juggler, they juggle them with 7 balls or whatever. But here you're going to be juggling with 4. It'd be much easier if you juggled with 2. And so, I might recommend that you try that if you're a beginning person. And because you don't want to get really frustrated with this and say, yeah, I quit. Because I know the feeling. And so, try that first, okay? Now, like I said before, I've gone over the whole thing with white. I'm mixing it, okay? Think of it as mixing it like if I had my palette, I would be mixing my white in with my terracotta colors, and, maybe I want to mix in a little bit of the cooler, like a little black maybe, and that will cool it down a little bit. And so I'll have little swatches of color on my palette. And this is the same thing that I'm doing there, okay? But I'm doing it on the paper itself, okay? And that's how you create these beautiful transitions of color, okay, and temperature. Think of it as temperature. I think of it as temperature changes, okay? So I look at like my cheekbone where I'm doing right now. See, it's like I'm painting rather than smushing it around. Okay, is that warm enough? Do I think I need to add a little bit of more warmth to it? Or do I think it's too dark? Or do I think it's too light? Okay, now after I finish this spot, I'm going to be going back in again with another layer I can add in more warmth, I can add in more coolness, whatever I need by making that decision, by looking at that coolness up there. Is it cooler than that or warmer than that, and how much cooler or warmer is it? Okay, now I've probably jumped ahead probably another 4 layers to get to this stage. Okay, and I've already done the jaw because it's pretty much a repeat of what I did on the cheek here. Okay, now I'm going in to show you that what I'm doing here is I'm going in with my white, okay? This is called scumbling, okay? Whenever you go into anything with a white, or you're cooling it down and lighting it up, it's called scumbling, okay? If you warm something up and darken it, it's called glazing, okay? Now, this whole process that I'm telling you is done very thinly, okay? Each layer is done subtly and thinly. It's probably very tedious, and if you watched me doing it in real life, lifetime, it'd probably be extremely boring. Sometimes I get tedious doing it. You feel like, oh, you get the shivers because it just becomes so tedious. But what I'm doing here is I'm softening up the edges. Okay? This is something that you do when you think something is pretty much done, and you're going over the whole piece. Usually I would work the whole thing at one time, but I worked shape to shape because, number one, I think it's more interesting for you guys to see it that way, and it's easier to understand form that way. If I work it from shape to shape, this shape goes up and around, this shape goes down and around, rather than doing the whole thing at one time. And not only that, I'd be 20 minutes into the video before I started in getting them with color. And I don't think you guys would want to watch me doing it for 20 minutes, just laying in that first layer. So I did it shape to shape. But what you have to do is here is I'm looking through everything to see if my edges are soft where they should be soft and hard where they should be hard. Okay. Another thing is see how I don't stop at the edges, right? I'm going over the top of all the edges. Okay. Edges are even the black there. I go over the top of the black and into my face here. What that does is it darkens it slightly. This is all slightly. Everything is very subtle. Okay, subtle changes, not any kind of extreme changes. Okay, and that's what all I'm doing here is hardening up certain edges and softening up other edges. And I'm doing it with right now with that paintbrush. It's basically like painting. And I wanted that edge, the jaw, to turn a little bit more. So I'm softening up that edge along the side of her jaw, and that will cause that jaw to turn in. Because that's what your jaw does. It goes from underneath your jaw up and around, and it starts going in toward your face. Okay, remember that's what I told you about the ant, and I think in this video I told you about the snail crawling across her face and leaving lines, right? That's how you create form, is, think of the snail walking across and leaving lines on her face. And that would be, how the form is. If you can do a contour edges like a topographical map, you'll get, it'll make it easier to understand that form change. As you can see, I love form. I love things to be rounded and, going in and out, pushing things forward and back. Okay, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. Okay, how do you get things to go back and forth, in space? By using only temperature. Okay, we're not going to go with value here, but I'm going to just tell you how to do it with temperature. Cool temperatures recede in space. The warm temperatures come forward in space. Okay, so even if I have, let's say, the most, like your ears, for instance, is really quite red. Okay, it has a lot of blood in your ears, and so it's if you looked at some of these it would be quite, like intense red, right? Probably more intense than anything I have on this piece here. Maybe as intense as a cheek over there on the left-hand side of the face. But anyhow, that you don't want that, because if I drew that, painted that ear that intense red, it would pop forward. And I want it to go back in space, because your ear is there even way behind your eyes. Okay, it's on, that's the whole side of your face there. And so I cooled things down back there. Okay, not like blue or anything. Remember, everything's a degree, right? And so that pushes that part of the face back. Okay, and I want things to come forward. I want the heated areas to be like around the nose, on the bottom of the nose, and the lips, and the chin. That area there, I want it to be quite warm, and that pops that forward. Okay. Now, I didn't talk about, I think, the light source here. The light source of this video, this photograph, is a cool light source. Okay. How do I know it's a cool light source? Because I look at the shadow shapes, and I determined that the shadows are quite warm. Okay, whenever you have a warm shadow shapes, that means you've got a cool light source. Okay, in other words, in this case here, it's a cool light source. So the shadow shapes underneath her neck here are going to be quite warm, just like the shadow that the nose is casting on this left-hand side of her cheek there is quite warm. It's because the light is quite cool. That means it's an indirect light source. Okay, it's probably a reflected light source. She's outside, but even so, the light source is reflected rather than directly hitting her face. Now, if she was in the Mojave Desert and it's 120 degrees out there, and the light was hitting her directly, the light source on the shadow shapes would be very cool. I mean, then it'd be almost like a blue, shadow shape, blue and like, darker. But in this case here, it's not, and that's why you see here artists talking about the northern light, light coming into their studio. It's a cooler light source, and it creates for beautiful shadow shapes. Okay, that's what you're looking at. You have to look at it very closely. To a layman person, they hear you talking about beautiful shadow shapes and, transitions of cool and light, and they may not think that you're being quite sincere, but that's the way you see it. Once you start doing it, and you start understanding it, you see these beautiful transitions. You look at a Sargent or, some of the other artists like that, you'll see the light, the temperature changes within the skin tones. And, they're actually, just extremely beautiful changes. So remember always to flex your colors and flex your temperatures, flex your values. So here I am. Another thing I wanted to talk about was, remember we were talking about form a little while ago. See around her throat there. See how my lines are going around her throat. Okay, that's telling me that her throat is actually rounded. Okay, now those lines are not going to be there at the end, but it's still, when I'm working it, I'm still always being reminded that 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 form is there, and I can work around that form. Okay. Now I'm going over the whole thing here with the white. Okay. Maybe I'm not going over with white. I think that's a pink. But anyhow, I went over there with pink. I should go over it with white pretty soon. Right, probably here. There we go. Okay, I'm going over the whole thing with my white. Like I've told you before, okay? This is the very first layer, okay? And the most important layer, because all that stuff I do right now is going to be showing through, like you can see up in the face. All that is showing through, right? It's the same thing's going to be happening here, but it's going to be much more subtle than what I have it now. Okay. Also, I wanted to show, make sure that you're going over the top of your form. It took me years probably to figure out why the drawing looks stiff. I mean, it looked, I couldn't figure out why does it look so stiff? By stiff, I don't mean, like stiff, but I mean like it looks almost cartoony, and the reason why it looks cartoony is by button up your edges, you're creating hard edges everywhere. Okay. And you don't want that. Remember, your hard edges are only like 5% of your edges, 95 soft. So go over the top of your edges lightly, and this will create a sense of the skin being one piece as a whole. The whole head will come together, and you'll understand that the skin on the neck is, just the same skin as on the face. But that's being created by going over the top of your edges. Now, hair, I realize that the hair has nothing to do with color, but I thought everybody would be a little bit interested in seeing how I did the hair. Okay, I did a little bit different here. The hair is, I do it in two ways. Most of the time I'll do the hair as a value change, more like the hair on the left-hand side of her face there, where the light is hitting a certain area and then it changes in value. That's the way I do hair normally. In this case here, I thought that the strands were beautiful, the way the light is hitting each individual strands, like on the left-hand side of her face there. I thought that was really beautiful, so I wanted to, do it that way. So I'm going to be showing each individual strand here. Okay, now I'm drawing in with black. Okay, the black is my negative space. The white here, like I'm drawing in here, is going to be a positive space. Okay, think of it as hardwood flooring. Okay, the black is the cracks in the flooring and in between the planks, and the white is the planks itself. Okay, so the planks are my positive shapes, and my negative shapes is the cracks in between. Okay, so each line that I'm drawing here has to have a logical sense, logical start, and a logical ending. Okay, you just can't have hair haphazard going in any direction you want it to. It has to conform to the shape of the head. Okay, remember that there's a skull in there, even though it's underneath all that hair there. The hair still conforms to a certain extent to the skull. Okay, so that's the lines will go up, and then starting at her parting there, you start up, down, around, and then it goes across that wave around the ears there, and you're looking for interesting gaps and shapes where some of the lines will be going underneath the other ones and creating these little like fish mouth gaps in the hair. Okay, and so this is the finished piece here. Okay, after I finished doing all the lines, I went in with a dark brown, and that created the form that I was talking about, to show the skull underneath her head, right? And then I went over with the terracotta red, and the highlights are done with a yellow ochre. Okay, remember I've used some yellow ochre on the face too. Certain areas are yellow, certain areas are pink. Okay, that's how I created the hair. I thought the hair was a lot of fun, so I wanted to show doing that. Okay, now I wanted to talk about this is a vignette. Okay, a vignette is something that is free formed. Okay, it does not touch any of the sides. Okay, so you have to create an interesting shape. Okay, that's what when you're drawing this whole thing out, it has to be sort of interesting. It can't be just a square sitting inside your vignette here, the rest of it. Now if it touched the sides, it would be either a partial bleed or a full bleed if it touched all four sides. Okay, so if you hear somebody say that this is a vignette, that's what a vignette is. Okay, so now that it's done, I think that it shows the temperature changes. I think you can see where everything is warm where it should be, and where it's cool where I want it to be cool. And I think it's a beautiful transition. So if you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you can hit the like button and the subscribe button, and that would help me out a lot in making future videos. Okay, so appreciate you watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.